In the last video, we spoke about how we would solve the issue of deployment inside of our application. We're now going to start working on our factory contract that will handle the deployment and record of all the deployed instances of campaigns. Before we start writing any code, I'm going to give you a quick outline of the design of this campaign factory. So we're going to call it campaign factory. We could just as easily call it factory, whatever you want to call it, either one is appropriate. This contract is going to have one variable. It's going to be an array of addresses that contains all of the deployed campaigns that have ever been created. The campaign factory will also have two functions. First, it will have a create campaign function. And as you might guess, this is going to deploy a new instance of an individual campaign and then store the resulting address back inside of the deployed campaigns array. We also need to make sure that we have the ability to get that big list of campaigns back to our application. And for that, we're going to make another function called getDeployedCampaigns. And essentially, all this does is return all the data inside of deployed campaigns. Remember, whenever we make an array with Solidity, the built-in getter that is provided to us for an array only retrieves one element. And we don't want to retrieve all the deployed campaigns one campaign at a time. Instead, we want to be able to retrieve all of them instantly in one function call. So that's why we're going to make this separate function right here. All right, so let's flip over to Remix and start working on this contract. The code for this is actually going to be very, very straightforward. It's really just understanding what's going on that's the real challenge here. So back inside of Remix, I'm going to create a new contract right above our existing one. So I'm going to give myself a little bit of space, and then I'll say contract campaign factory. Inside of here, we'll declare that new variable to hold the list of all of our different deployed campaigns. So address, public, deployed campaigns. Next, we'll declare the function that allows a user to create a new instance of a campaign. So this will be our create campaign function. This function is going to need to take one argument. Remember that right now, we are expecting that whenever someone creates a campaign, they provide a constructor argument of the minimum amount of money that needs to be donated. So because the constructor requires this argument right here, and we are no longer going to expect any users or anyone at all to directly be creating a campaign, we have to make sure that the create campaign function right here receives that argument, that minimum contribution argument, and passes it along to the new campaign constructor function. So as an argument to this thing right here, we'll take in a uint called minimum. So this is the minimum contribution that our new campaign expects. Now here's where the magic happens. Right inside this function, we are going to instruct this contract to deploy a new instance of campaign. To do so, we write out new campaign and then provide any constructor arguments that this thing requires. And in this case, the only thing it requires is the minimum contribution. So we can pass in minimum like so. So that's pretty much it. This right here creates a new contract that gets deployed to the blockchain. After that deployment occurs, it then returns the address of the newly created campaign. So we can store that newly created address in a local variable and then add it into the deployed campaigns array. So we can say that we're going to create a new variable of type address. We'll call it new campaign, and its value will come from the campaign creation line right here. Then immediately after that, we can take this new address or this new campaign and add it to the deployed campaigns array. So deployed campaigns dot push new campaign like so. Cool. So that's pretty much it. Now there's one thing that is a little gotcha here around this deployment process. This is a little bit of a gotcha. Back down inside of our campaign constructor function, you'll recall that we not only are expecting to get this argument of minimum passed in the constructor, but you'll recall that we also use the constructor to set up the manager of our contract. So unfortunately, whenever we create a new contract or whenever we call this constructor function from another contract, the message.sender will be the other contract, not our user. So if we currently use the factory to create a new instance of campaign, the manager will be marked as our factory's address. And the manager is definitely not our factory. The manager is whoever had originally asked for this new instance of campaign to be created. In order to get access to the address of the person who is trying to actually create the new campaign, we're going to need to get that address from inside of the create campaign function right here, and then pass it into the constructor of the campaign argument right here. Or excuse me, the constructor of the campaign contract, my mistake. Again, this is all because whenever we have one contract build another, the message variable, the message global variable inside campaign will be the campaign factory, not the user who's trying to make this thing. So in short, that's just a long description for saying we have to pass in message.sender right here. So at this function, at create campaign, message.sender is the user who is trying to create the new campaign. So this is definitely the correct address right here. So now we can go down into the campaign. We can receive that address as an argument. So we'll say address, and we can call this, I don't know, let's just call it creator to make sure that it's really obvious what it is. So creator right here is the address of the person who is actually trying to create the new contract. And then rather than using message.sender, which is the address of the factory, we will use the creator address, like so. Okay, so that's pretty much it for create campaign. Now the last thing we have to do is to make sure we add a function that returns the entire array of deployed campaigns. And that's going to be pretty quick, so let's just do it right now. Inside of here, we'll add on function get deployed campaigns. This takes no argument, but it does return an array of addresses. So we can say public view returns address array, like so. Remember that public means that anyone can call this function. View means that no data inside the contract is modified by this function. And then returns address array obviously means that we are going to return a value of type address array. Then inside of here, we can add on return deployed campaigns. So there's our factory in total. We now have one function to create a new campaign, and then we have another function to return a list of all the campaigns that have been created. Let's take a pause here. We'll come back in the next video and we'll test this thing out by using Remix. So I'll see you in just a minute.